The laughter echoed through the restaurant like a knife cutting through my chest. My brother Jake threw his head back, slapping the table as tears of amusement rolled down his cheeks. "You got fired from Henderson Marketing? Oh man, this is priceless." His voice carried across the entire dining room, drawing stares from other patrons. I felt my face burn with embarrassment as he continued his cruel display. "What did you do this time, Marcus? Did you finally show them how incompetent you really are?" Hello, dear friends. I'm Tina, and today I'm bringing you a story that will absolutely blow your mind. It's about justice, family betrayal, and one of the most incredible plot twists I've ever encountered. I promise you, if you stay with me until the end of this video, you'll witness something that will restore your faith in karma and show you that sometimes the universe has the most perfect timing. This is a story about a brother who thought he knew everything, but discovered he knew nothing at all. Please hit that like button and subscribe, because stories like this don't come around every day. And I want to make sure you never miss these incredible tales of human triumph. Marcus sat frozen in his chair, watching his older brother Jake celebrate his misfortune with pure glee. The termination letter was still fresh in his pocket, the words "effective immediately" burning in his memory. For 26 years, Jake had been the golden child, the successful lawyer, the one with the perfect house in the suburbs, the Mercedes in the driveway, and the trophy wife who looked like she stepped out of a magazine. Marcus, on the other hand, had always been seen as the family disappointment, the younger brother who never quite measured up to Jake's achievements. "I mean, seriously," Jake continued, wiping his eyes dramatically. "How do you mess up a simple marketing job? Even a monkey could do that work." He turned to his wife, Sarah, who sat uncomfortably beside him, clearly embarrassed by her husband's behavior. "Remember what I told you about my little brother? This is exactly what I was talking about. No ambition, no drive, just coasting through life expecting everything to be handed to him." Marcus felt something deep inside him shift. For years, he had endured Jake's condescension, his constant need to prove his superiority, his cruel jokes at family gatherings. Their parents had always favored Jake, praising his law degree while dismissing Marcus's business ventures as pipe dreams. But what Jake didn't know, what nobody in his family knew, was that Marcus had been living a carefully constructed lie for the past 5 years. The truth was far more complex than anyone could imagine. Marcus hadn't just been an employee at Henderson Marketing. He had been the silent owner, operating under a carefully crafted corporate structure that kept his identity hidden from everyone, including his own family. The firing that Jake found so amusing was, actually, Marcus's strategic decision to shut down the entire operation after discovering some disturbing practices within the company. Henderson Marketing had grown from a small startup that Marcus launched in his garage into a multi-million-dollar empire. Through a series of shell companies and legal structures that his own attorney, ironically not Jake, had helped him establish, Marcus had built something extraordinary while maintaining the facade of being just another struggling employee. The decision to let his family believe he was unsuccessful had been painful, but necessary. He had wanted to see who would support him during difficult times and who would kick him when he was down. As Jake's laughter continued, Marcus remembered the conversation he'd had with his business partner just 3 days earlier. "Are you sure you want to do this, Marcus? Once we shut down Henderson, there's no going back. Your cover will eventually be blown." Marcus had nodded firmly. "It's time, David. I can't keep pretending to be someone I'm not, and I need to see what my family is really made of." The restaurant felt suffocating as Jake's performance continued. Other diners were now openly staring, some with disapproval at Jake's loudness, others with sympathy toward Marcus. Sarah finally placed her hand on her husband's arm, whispering urgently, "Jake, that's enough. People are watching." But Jake was too caught up in his moment of superiority to care about social decorum. "You know what? Marcus!" Jake leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with malicious satisfaction. "Maybe this is exactly what you needed. A reality check. You've been coasting for too long, thinking someone would just hand you success. Well, welcome to the real world, little brother. Maybe now you'll finally grow up and get serious about your life." Marcus studied his brother's face, memorizing every detail of this moment. The arrogance, the cruelty, The complete lack of empathy. It was all there, displayed for everyone to see. He thought about the irony of the situation. Jake, who prided himself on being a successful lawyer, had no idea that his failure of a brother had just made more money in the past year than Jake would make in the next decade. The conversation continued for another painful hour, with Jake regaling anyone who would listen about his brother's latest failure. He told stories from their childhood, painting Marcus as the perpetual underachiever, the one who never quite got it right. Each word was carefully chosen to wound, each laugh designed to humiliate. Marcus endured it all, knowing that very soon the tables would turn in ways that Jake couldn't possibly imagine. As they finally prepared to leave the restaurant, Jake delivered his final blow. "You know what, Marcus? I've been thinking about this all wrong. Maybe I should be thanking Henderson Marketing for finally seeing what the rest of us have known all along. You're just not cut out for success. Some people are winners, and some people are, well, they're you." The laughter that followed would haunt the restaurant long after they left, but it would haunt Jake even longer. The next morning arrived with the kind of clarity that only comes after a storm. Marcus sat in his home office, surrounded by monitors displaying real-time data from his various business ventures. The modest apartment he called home was a deliberate choice, a carefully maintained facade that had served him well over the years. While Jake lived in his suburban mansion, believing himself superior, Marcus had quietly amassed a portfolio that would make most Fortune 500 executives envious. His phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Hope you're updating your resume, loser. Maybe McDonald's is hiring." The message was accompanied by a laughing emoji because even in his cruelty, Jake couldn't resist adding insult to injury. Marcus screenshot the message, adding it to a folder on his desktop labeled Evidence of Character, a collection he had been building for years, waiting for the right moment to reveal who his brother truly was. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on Marcus. While Jake practiced law at a mid-sized firm, handling divorce cases and minor corporate disputes, Marcus had built an empire that spanned 3 industries. His real estate holdings alone were worth more than Jake's entire net worth. But the crown jewel of his portfolio was something Jake would never see coming, something that would shake his brother's world to its very foundation. Marcus picked up his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. "David, it's time to move forward with the acquisition we discussed." His business partner's voice was cautious on the other end. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Marcus? Once we do this, there's no taking it back. Your family will know everything." Marcus looked at the screenshot of Jake's mocking text and felt his resolve strengthen. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." The target of their acquisition was Hartwell and Associates, the very law firm where Jake worked. The firm had been struggling financially for months, and their desperate need for capital made them an easy target for a hostile takeover. What Jake didn't know was that his own brother had been quietly buying up the firm's debt, positioning himself for the perfect moment to strike. The papers would be signed within the week, making Marcus the majority owner of the company that employed his arrogant brother. As Marcus worked through the final details of the acquisition, his mind wandered back to their childhood. Jake had always been the favorite, the one their parents showcased at every opportunity. When Marcus started his first business at 16, a simple lawn care service, Jake had mocked it mercilessly, calling it child's play and predicting it would fail within a month. That business had eventually grown into a landscaping company that Marcus sold for his first $1 million. But Jake had never known about its success. The pattern had continued throughout their adult lives. Every time Marcus achieved something significant, he had chosen to keep it private, partly to avoid Jake's jealousy and partly to protect himself from his family's tendency to ask for financial help once they knew he had money. The loneliness of this deception had been crushing at times, but yesterday's humiliation had confirmed that his caution had been justified. Marcus's computer chimed with an incoming email from his attorney. "Acquisition complete. You now own 67% of Hartwell and Associates. How would you like to proceed with the management changes?" Marcus smiled for the first time in days. The plan he had been crafting was about to unfold in ways that would forever change the dynamic between him and his brother. The beauty of the situation was its perfect symmetry. Jake had laughed at Marcus for being fired, never imagining that his younger brother was actually the one doing the firing. Now, Marcus would be in a position to give Jake a taste of his own medicine, but he planned to do it with a finesse that would teach his brother a lesson about humility, respect, and the dangers of underestimating others. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was his mother, no doubt calling to offer her version of comfort after Jake had undoubtedly shared the news of Marcus's failure with the entire family. "Oh, sweetheart," she began, her voice dripping with the kind of pity that felt more like judgment. "Jake told me what happened at your job. I'm so sorry, dear. Maybe this is a sign that you should consider going back to school, getting a real degree like your brother." Even his mother's condolences were laced with criticism and comparison to Jake's achievements. Marcus listened patiently, knowing that very soon these conversations would take on an entirely different tone. "Don't worry about me, Mom," he replied calmly. "Sometimes what looks like an ending is actually just a new beginning." Friends, I need to pause here for just a moment because this story is about to take a turn that will absolutely amaze you. If you're feeling that mix of anger and anticipation right now, if you're hoping that Marcus gets the justice he deserves, then you understand exactly why I love sharing these stories with you. Please, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because stories like this, stories about real people facing real challenges and finding extraordinary ways to overcome them. These are the stories that remind us why we should never give up hope. And please share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had someone underestimate you? Have you ever been in Marcus's position? I read every single comment, and your stories inspire the content I bring to this channel. Now, let's continue with this incredible journey, because what happens next will blow your mind. The following Monday morning arrived, with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel possible. Marcus dressed carefully for what would be the most important day of his professional life, not because of any business deal or financial milestone, but because it would be the day he finally showed his true face to the world. He chose a simple navy suit, nothing flashy or ostentatious, because the impact he was about to make would come from his words and actions, not his appearance. At exactly 9 a.m., Marcus walked into the offices of Hartwell & Associates. The receptionist, Jenny, looked up with surprise. She had seen him there before during his secret meetings with the senior partners, but today something was different about his demeanor. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," she said respectfully. "The staff meeting you requested is set up in the main conference room." Marcus nodded and made his way through the familiar hallways, past Jake's office where his brother was undoubtedly preparing for another day of what he believed was superiority over his failed younger sibling. The irony was delicious. Jake had spent years mocking Marcus's lack of success, never knowing that his brother owned the very building where he worked, the desk where he sat, even the parking space where he left his precious Mercedes each morning. The conference room was packed with the firm's employees, from junior associates to senior partners. Jake entered last, looking confused and slightly annoyed at being summoned to a mandatory meeting without explanation. He spotted Marcus sitting at the head of the conference table, and his confusion deepened into irritation. "What the hell is he doing here?" Jake whispered to his colleague, loud enough for several people to hear. Marcus stood slowly, surveying the room with the calm confidence of a man who had waited years for this moment. "Good morning, everyone. I know you're wondering why you've been asked to attend this meeting, and I know some of you are surprised to see me here." His eyes found Jake's face, watching as confusion gave way to growing unease. "My name is Marcus Carter, and as of this morning, I am the majority owner of Hartwell & Associates." The silence that followed was deafening. Jake's face went through a fascinating transformation, from confusion to disbelief to dawning horror as the implications began to sink in. "That's impossible," he stammered, his voice cracking slightly. "You just got fired from some marketing company. You don't have that kind of money." Marcus smiled, the expression holding years of suppressed truth. "Actually, Jake, I wasn't fired from Henderson Marketing. I shut it down. I owned it. I've owned it for 5 years, along with several other companies that you've never bothered to ask about." He gestured to the legal documents spread across the table. These papers confirm my ownership of this firm, purchased through a series of acquisitions that began 6 months ago. The room erupted in whispers as the staff tried to process this information. Jake's face had turned an alarming shade of red, his hands gripping the edge of the table as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. "You're lying," he said desperately. "This is some kind of sick joke. You live in a tiny apartment, you drive a 10-year-old Honda, His voice trailed off as the reality began to penetrate his disbelief. "I live modestly by choice," Marcus explained calmly, his voice carrying clearly through the room. "I drive a reliable car because I don't need to impress anyone, and I let my family believe I was unsuccessful because I wanted to see who would support me during difficult times and who would kick me when I was down." His eyes never left Jake's face as he delivered each word with surgical precision. One of the senior partners, Robert Hartwell himself, cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Carter, what does this mean for the firm? Are there going to be changes to our operations?" Marcus turned his attention to the older man, his demeanor shifting to pure professionalism. "There will be some changes, yes, but they'll be positive ones. This firm has tremendous potential that hasn't been fully realized. Under new management, I believe we can triple our revenue within 2 years." Jake found his voice again, though it came out as more of a croak. "You can't be serious about this. You don't know anything about running a law firm. You'll destroy everything we've built here." The desperation in his voice was palpable, and Marcus almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Actually, Jake, I know quite a bit about running businesses, as you're about to discover. I've been studying this firm's operations for months, identifying inefficiencies and missed opportunities. Did you know that your billing practices are losing the company approximately $30,000 per month? Or that your client retention rate is 20% below industry standard?" Marcus opened a folder and began reading. Statistics that made several partners shift uncomfortably in their seats. The presentation continued for another 20 minutes, with Marcus laying out his detailed plans for the firm's future. He spoke about expanding their practice areas, improving their technology infrastructure, and implementing performance-based compensation structures. Every word was professional, measured, and completely devastating to Jake's sense of reality. As the meeting drew to a close, Marcus addressed the elephant in the room. "I know some of you are concerned about job security, given the change in ownership. Let me be clear. Everyone will be evaluated based on their merit, their contribution to the firm, and their ability to work collaboratively with their colleagues. Those who demonstrate professionalism, competence, and respect for others will find increased opportunities for advancement. Those who don't," he let the sentence hang in the air, his meaning crystal clear. Jake remained in his seat, long. After the meeting ended, staring at the conference table as if it might provide answers to questions he didn't even know how to ask. The brother he had mocked and belittled for decades had just revealed himself to be everything Jake had pretended to be: successful, powerful, and completely in control of his own destiny. The days that followed the revelation were a masterclass in psychological warfare, though Marcus preferred to think of it as long overdue education. Jake had always been the type of person who derived his self-worth from being better than others, particularly his younger brother. Now, faced with the devastating truth that he had been living in a carefully constructed illusion, Jake's entire identity began to crumble like a house of cards in a windstorm. Marcus watched his brother's transformation with a mixture of satisfaction and genuine concern. The arrogant, mocking Jake had been replaced by a confused, almost broken man who seemed to question everything he thought he knew about himself and his place in the world. Jake had stopped returning calls from family members, presumably to avoid having to explain how his failure of a brother had become his boss overnight. The changes at Hartwell & Associates were swift and decisive. Marcus implemented new systems that streamlined operations and improved client satisfaction. He brought in consultants to train staff on modern legal technologies and established performance metrics that rewarded results, rather than seniority. Within 2 weeks, the firm was operating more efficiently than it had in years, and several clients who had been considering taking their business elsewhere decided to renew their contracts. But the most interesting changes were happening on a personal level. Marcus had given Jake a choice. He could continue working at the firm under the new management structure, accepting his brother as his boss and adapting to the new professional environment. Or he could resign and seek employment elsewhere. The decision, Marcus had made clear, was entirely up to Jake. For 3 agonizing days, Jake wrestled with this choice. His pride screamed at him to quit, to walk away rather than submit to his younger brother's authority. But his practical side recognized that finding another position at his salary level would be extremely difficult in the current job market. His mortgage, his car payments, his wife's expensive tastes, all of it depended on his income from Hartwell and Associates. On Thursday morning, Jake appeared in Marcus's new office, the corner suite that had previously belonged to the senior partner. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled. "I want to stay," he said quietly, the words clearly causing him physical pain to utter. Marcus looked up from the contract he was reviewing, his expression neutral. "I'm glad to hear that, Jake, but we need to establish some ground rules. First, our personal relationship and our professional relationship are completely separate. In this office, I'm your boss and you're my employee. What happens between us as brothers will be handled outside of work hours." Jake nodded stiffly, his jaw clenched so tightly that Marcus could see the muscles twitching beneath his skin. "Second," Marcus continued, "your treatment of colleagues, support staff, and clients will be held to the highest professional standards. I've been reviewing your personnel file, and there have been several complaints about your interpersonal style. That ends now." The conversation that followed was perhaps the most honest exchange the brothers had ever had as adults. Marcus laid out his expectations clearly and without malice, while Jake struggled to accept the complete reversal of their roles. "I don't understand how this happened," Jake finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "How did you become so successful while I thought you were failing?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, considering his response carefully. "I became successful because I focused on building something meaningful rather than tearing others down. While you were spending your energy trying to prove you were better than me, I was actually working to become better than I was yesterday. The difference is subtle but profound." The weeks that followed were a revelation for both brothers. Jake, stripped of his false sense of superiority, began to discover aspects of himself that had been buried under years of arrogance and competition. He started listening to his colleagues instead of dismissing their ideas. He began treating support staff with respect, and he even apologized to several clients for previous rudeness. Marcus watched these changes with cautious optimism. He had hoped that this experience would humble his brother, but he hadn't expected such a complete transformation. Jake was becoming someone Marcus might actually enjoy spending time with, a possibility that had seemed impossible just a month earlier. The real test came during a family dinner at their parents' house. Their mother had been beside herself with confusion ever since learning about Marcus's true financial situation. She kept apologizing for years of treating him as the unsuccessful son, while simultaneously struggling to adjust her perception of her children's relative achievements. "I just don't understand," she said for the 10th time that evening. "Why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us think you were struggling?" Marcus set down his fork and looked around the table at his family, his mother, his father, and Jake, all waiting for his answer. "Because I needed to know who you really were," he said simply. "I needed to know if you would love me and support me when you thought I was failing, or if your affection was conditional on my success. I needed to know if Jake would be there for me during difficult times, or if he would use my struggles as an opportunity to feel better about himself." The silence that followed was heavy with years of unspoken truths. Jake stared at his plate, his face flushed with shame as he remembered his behavior at the restaurant, his mocking texts, his cruel laughter at his brother's supposed misfortune. "I'm sorry," he whispered, and for the first time in their adult lives, Marcus believed he meant it. The transformation of Jake Carter was nothing short of miraculous, though it came with its own set of challenges and revelations that neither brother had anticipated. 3 months after the shocking revelation at Hartwell and Associates, Jake had become not just a reformed version of his former self, but someone entirely new, a man who was discovering qualities within himself that had been buried under decades of competitive arrogance and insecurity. At work, Jake had thrown himself into his cases with renewed vigor, but this time his motivation came from genuine desire to help his clients rather than simply outperforming his colleagues. He began taking on pro bono cases, something he had previously scorned as charity work for bleeding hearts. His first case involved helping an elderly woman who was being evicted from her apartment by an unscrupulous landlord. The old Jake would have dismissed such a case as beneath his attention, but the new Jake saw it as an opportunity to use his skills for genuine good. Marcus watched these changes with a mixture of pride and cautious optimism. He had hoped that humbling his brother would lead to positive growth, but he hadn't expected such a complete personality overhaul. During their weekly one-on-one meetings, a professional necessity that had evolved into something approaching actual brotherhood, Jake would often share insights about his cases that revealed a depth of empathy Marcus had never known existed. "I had lunch with Mrs. Henderson yesterday," Jake reported during one such meeting, referring to the elderly woman from his pro bono case. "She wanted to thank me again for helping her keep her apartment. She actually cried, Marcus. When was the last time I did something that moved someone to tears of gratitude rather than frustration?" The question hung in the air between them, highlighting just how far Jake had come from the man who had mocked Marcus's supposed failure just months earlier. But perhaps the most significant change was happening in Jake's marriage. Sarah, who had endured years of being married to a man whose sense of self-worth depended on putting others down, was slowly discovering what it felt like to be married to someone who built others up instead of tearing them down. "He's like a different person," Sarah confided to Marcus during a family barbecue. "At first, I was worried that this whole experience had broken him, but now I think it might have actually fixed something that was broken all along. He listens to me now, really listens. He asks about my day, and actually cares about the answer. I haven't seen him mock or belittle anyone in months." But the most profound change came in Jake's relationship with success itself. For years, he had measured his worth by comparing his achievements to others, particularly Marcus. Now, stripped of his false sense of superiority and faced with his brother's genuine accomplishments, Jake was learning to find satisfaction in his own growth and contribution rather than in being better than someone else. The firm was thriving under Marcus's leadership, but he had been careful to give credit where it was due. Jake's newfound dedication and improved client relationships had contributed significantly to the company's success, and Marcus made sure to acknowledge this publicly. During the firm's quarterly meeting, he specifically praised Jake's work on several high-profile cases and his leadership in establishing the new pro bono program. "The measure of a man isn't whether he can win when everything is going his way," Marcus told the assembled staff, his eyes finding Jake's face in the crowd. "It's whether he can learn, grow, and contribute meaningfully when faced with challenges that force him to question everything he thought he knew about himself." The personal revelation came during a private conversation between the brothers on a late Friday evening. They were the last ones in the office, Jake having stayed late to prepare for a complex case, Marcus working on acquisition plans for expanding the firm's reach into neighboring cities. The silence between them was comfortable now, a stark contrast to the tension that had defined their relationship for so many years. "Can I ask you something?" Jake said suddenly, looking up from his case files. "When you were building your empire, when you were becoming everything I pretended to be, were you ever tempted to throw it in my face, to prove me wrong in front of everyone?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "Every day," he admitted, "especially after family gatherings where you would go out of your way to humiliate me. There were times when I wanted nothing more than to walk into Mom and Dad's house and show them my bank statements, just to watch your face when you realized how wrong you'd been about me. What stopped you? Because I realized that proving you wrong wouldn't make me right. Success isn't about being better than someone else. It's about being better than you were yesterday. And frankly, I was getting more satisfaction from building something meaningful than I would have gotten from destroying your illusions." Jake was quiet for a long moment, processing this insight. "I wasted so many years trying to prove I was better than you," he finally said. "All that energy I spent competing with you, I could have been using to actually become someone worth respecting. Before we continue with this incredible transformation, I want to take a moment to connect with you, my dear viewers. If this story is touching your heart, if you're feeling the power of redemption and genuine change that's happening between these brothers, please hit that subscribe button and share this video. Stories like Jake and Marcus's remind us that it's never too late to change, never too late to become the person we were meant to be. I love bringing you these stories because they show us the best of human nature, our capacity for growth, for forgiveness, for becoming better than we were. And please, share your own stories in the comments. Have you experienced a transformation like Jake's? Have you had to humble yourself to discover who you really were? Your experiences inspire me and help me choose the stories that will resonate most deeply with our community. Now, let's see how this remarkable journey concludes. The true test of Jake's transformation came 6 months later, in a situation that would have perfectly suited the old Jake's need to prove his superiority. Marcus had been approached by a major corporation seeking legal representation for a complex merger that would bring the firm its largest fee in company history. The case was exactly the kind of high-profile, ego-boosting opportunity that the previous Jake would have fought tooth and nail to claim for himself. Instead, Jake approached Marcus with a surprising proposal. "I've been looking at the Henderson merger case," he said during their Monday morning meeting. "I think Jennifer Walsh would be the perfect lead attorney for this. She has more experience with international corporate law than anyone else in the firm, and her attention to detail is exactly what this case needs." Marcus raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised. Jennifer Walsh was a junior partner who had been with the firm for 3 years, brilliant but often overlooked because of the old boys network that had dominated the company's culture. The old Jake would have seen her as competition to be undermined, not talent to be promoted. "That's an interesting recommendation," Marcus said, carefully. "But the client specifically requested our most senior attorney. They're expecting either you or Robert to handle this personally." Jake's response revealed just how fundamentally he had changed. "Then I'll recommend Robert as lead with Jennifer as co-counsel. This case is too important for ego games. It needs to be handled by the people best suited for the work, not the people with the biggest titles." He paused, then added with a self-deprecating smile, "Besides, I'm still learning what it means to be genuinely good at something rather than just good at making myself look important." The Henderson merger became a showcase for the new culture that Marcus and Jake had built together at Hartwell & Associates. Jennifer Walsh led the case with the support of a carefully chosen team that included Jake in a supporting role he embraced without resentment. The collaboration was seamless, professional, and ultimately successful, earning the firm not just a substantial fee, but a reputation for putting client needs above internal politics. But the most significant moment came during the celebration dinner after the merger was finalized. The client, Henderson Corporation's CEO David Liu, specifically praised the firm's collaborative approach. "In my experience," he told the assembled team, "law firms are usually dominated by ego and internal competition. What I found here was a group of professionals who clearly respect each other and work together for the common good. That kind of culture is rare and valuable." As the evening wound down, Jake found himself in conversation with Jennifer Walsh, the woman he had recommended for the lead role, despite knowing it would diminish his own profile on the case. "I want to thank you," she said quietly. "Robert told me it was your recommendation that got me this opportunity. I know the old management structure would never have given a junior partner the chance to lead such a major case." Jake felt something he had never experienced before, genuine satisfaction that came not from personal achievement, but from helping someone else succeed. "You earned it, Jennifer. I just made sure the right person got the recognition they deserved." The words came naturally, without the calculated self-interest that had characterized his interactions for so many years. The conversation that evening led to something unexpected. Jake began mentoring younger attorneys in the firm, helping them develop their skills and navigate their careers. The man who had once hoarded opportunities and information began sharing both freely, discovering that lifting others up actually enhanced his own reputation rather than diminishing it. Sarah noticed the change most dramatically. "You come home happy now," she observed one evening as they sat on their porch, watching their children play in the yard. For years, you came home either stressed about work or bragging about how you'd outsmarted someone. Now you come home and tell me stories about people you've helped or problems you've solved. It's like being married to a completely different person. Jake considered this observation seriously. Maybe I am a different person. Maybe the person I was before was just a scared kid trying to prove he was worth something by making sure everyone else felt worthless. It's exhausting living like that, constantly competing, constantly needing to be better than someone else to feel okay about yourself. The relationship between Jake and Marcus had evolved into something neither had thought possible: genuine friendship. They had dinner together regularly now, not out of family obligation, but because they enjoyed each other's company. Their conversations had depth and honesty that had been impossible when Jake's ego dominated every interaction. "I've been thinking about something," Jake said during one such dinner. "All those years when you were building your companies and I was mocking you for being unsuccessful, you could have destroyed me at any time. You had the power to humiliate me in front of the whole family, to prove that everything I said about you was wrong. Why didn't you?" Marcus set down his coffee cup and considered the question. "Because destroying you wouldn't have built me up. And more importantly, I always hoped that someday we could actually be brothers instead of competitors. If I had used my success as a weapon against you, that possibility would have died forever." The wisdom of that decision was evident now. Instead of brothers divided by resentment and humiliation, they had become partners in both business and life. Jake's transformation had been genuine because it came from within, motivated by his own recognition of what he wanted to become rather than imposed from outside as punishment for what he had been. Their parents had struggled to understand the dynamic between their sons, but eventually came to appreciate what they had witnessed. "It's like watching both of your boys become the men I always hoped they would be," their mother had said tearfully during a recent family gathering. "Marcus, you showed such wisdom in how you handled everything. And Jake, you showed such courage in admitting you needed to change." 12 months had passed since that revelation that changed everything forever, and Marcus now found himself before an expanded team at the company that was once called Hartwell and Associates, but now proudly bore the name Carter and Associates, reflecting its new direction and visionary leadership. The transformation was visible in every corner of the renovated office. From 32 employees, the company had grown to 67 dedicated collaborators, opened 2 satellite offices in strategic cities, and achieved an impressive 180% increase in annual revenue. But all these numbers, however impressive they might be, told only a small part of the true story that had unfolded over those extraordinary months of change. The real transformation had been cultural, profound, and touching. The office that was once characterized by fierce competition and a rigid, suffocating hierarchy had metamorphosed into a collaborative environment where each individual contribution was valued, recognized, and celebrated with genuine enthusiasm. Jake played a crucial role in this radical transformation, using his natural leadership skills not to dominate or subjugate other employees, as he had done in the past, but to elevate them, inspire them, and help them reach their maximum potential. It was as if he had discovered a completely new version of himself, a version he didn't know existed. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began his speech to the assembled team, his voice echoing with natural authority and human warmth throughout the company's main hall. "Exactly 1 year ago, our firm was desperately struggling to find its true identity and fundamental purpose. Today, we are not only financially successful, we are making a real and tangible difference in our community and in the lives of our clients, touching hearts and transforming realities. This extraordinary transformation didn't happen due to the isolated efforts of a single talented person. It happened because we learned to truly work together, to support each other mutually in difficult moments, and to measure our success not only by what we achieved individually, but by what we accomplished as a united, cohesive, and determined team." Jake watched his brother speak with genuine and profound admiration, marveling at the leadership skills that Marcus had developed and perfected during his years of silently building business in absolute secrecy. The Jake of before, that bitter and competitive man, would have felt jealous of the attention and respect that Marcus naturally commanded. The new Jake, transformed by the humbling but liberating experience, felt genuine pride in being associated with someone who used his power so carefully, thoughtfully, and effectively for the common good. After the inspiring meeting, the two brothers found themselves alone in Marcus's elegant office, looking through the panoramic window at the urban horizon that stretched before them like a map of infinite possibilities. The silence between them was comfortable and meaningful, loaded with the emotional weight of everything that had changed dramatically and everything that had remained constant and solid, especially the family bonds that had united them since distant childhood. "You know," Jake finally said, breaking the contemplative silence with a voice loaded with genuine emotion, "I spent so many years believing that success meant defeating other people, stepping on them to reach the top alone. But watching you lead this team, seeing how you build instead of destroy, how you elevate instead of bring down, I finally understand what true success really means. It's not about being better than others, it's about helping everyone become better versions of themselves." Marcus turned to face his brother, his eyes reflecting years of hurt transformed into understanding and forgiveness. "Jake, that day when you laughed at my termination, for a moment I felt anger, deep disappointment, even hatred. But now I realize that moment was necessary. It was the catalyst that forced me to reveal who I really was, not only to you, but to myself as well. Sometimes we need to be broken before we discover our true inner strength. I deeply regret," Jake murmured, his voice trembling slightly with contained emotion. "I regret having doubted you, having belittled your dreams, having been the brother who should have supported but chose to ridicule instead. You deserved my respect from the beginning, and I failed miserably in demonstrating it when you needed it most." Marcus placed a comforting hand on his brother's shoulder, feeling the weight of years of misunderstanding finally dissipating like morning mist. "We both learned valuable lessons, Jake. You about humility and teamwork. I about the importance of not hiding who we really are from the people we love. This company, this success we've built together, it's the result of our shared journey through adversity to redemption." As the sun slowly set over the city, painting the sky with golden and orange tones, the two brothers remained there, united by the transformative experience that had changed not only their careers, but their souls, knowing they had discovered something much more valuable than any business success: the true meaning of family, forgiveness, and personal growth.